take some good notes. First of all, we have what they call simple interest. And we also have compound interest. And in both of these, I know you've been exposed to these somewhere along the line. Let's explore the differences, because simple interest is still used in today's society. In specific, simple interest deals with short-term loans. So as an example, I'll give you this first. Short-term loans. Compound interest deals with investments. Putting money in the bank. Also, compound interest is used with retirement plans and handling annuities. Okay, so those are some of the general breakdowns. Now, in terms of like, how would you handle them from a formula standpoint? From a formula standpoint, simple interest goes like this. Maybe you saw this when you were younger. Interest, I equals PRT. Does that ring a bell? For some it may, but also the more sophisticated form for simple interest was the accumulated amount is the principal times 1 plus the interest rate times the time. Compound interest, which is more commonly used, the accumulated amount is the principal times 1 plus the interest rate to the nth power. And n could also be the same as time. Okay, so when you talk about simple interest, here's an example. Buy let's say a TV for, I'm making this a really exclusive TV, for $3,000. This is one of these really nice big screen TVs, okay? We borrow the money from, what's our date today, ladies? 24th. Yep, let's go with April 24th. We're going to pay it back on September 2nd. Okay. If the interest rate is 8% simple, how much would we owe? On September 2nd. Okay, so that's a question for you. So it's a short-term loan, very common. You may say instead of taking years to pay it off, we're going to pay it off in a short-term period. How would you handle that? Well, first off, are you going to pay more than $3,000? Yeah. Sure, because you borrowed that money for a period of time. The key is, first off, how many days did we borrow it? So we have to go back to the months. Remember, do you know how to do that? If you didn't have a calendar in front of you, how to figure out the number of days in each month? Ever do that before with your knuckles? Ever do this before? Let's try this. See how this works. Okay. January is the first knuckle. The crevices are the other off months. January, February, March, April, May, June, July. But then August, you start over or go to the next up hand. August, September, October, November, December. The knuckles are all what? How many days? 31. All the other months are, except for February, right? Okay, so keeping that in mind, whether you use the knuckles idea or you use a calendar, for April, we've got April, May, June, July, August, and September. Okay, tell me, how many days elapsed from the 24th to the end of the month for April? 6, good, because there's 30. And then for May, we've got a total of how many days? 31. How about for June? 30, good. July? 31. August? All right, 31, is that right? And then finally September, we're only going through the 2nd, so 2 days. So a total of how many days did we borrow it for? I'm coming up with 131 days. See if I did that right. Making sure I didn't miss one. So this is very common. Like you could go to Best Buy, or you could go to Target, and you may buy something just like this, a product, and then have it financed over a short-term period. The way this would work is using the simple interest equation. It would be the accumulated amount that you would pay back is the principal, what you borrowed it for, $3,000, times 1 plus, what's our interest rate in this case? 8%, and that's a little high for this day and age right now, because it has come down a bit. More like 4 or 5 would be right in line. 0.08, and then times the time. Now, the time is in years, so how would you handle this with 131 days? How much is this of a year? Good, based on what? 131 out of how many days? That's right. So if you wanted to show it, it's going to be out of a 365-day year. If it was a leap year, that'd be a different story. Then you'd add another day. But most places don't count that extra day. So you can see how much you would owe. Now, are you pretty good with the calculator? What do you do first? We multiply and then add the times 3,000. See what you come up with. So what's your accumulated amount, ladies? Yeah, 3,086 and 14 cents. Okay, so when September 2nd rolls around, you've got to pay this back. All right, that's a short-term loan. So someone might say, well, how much interest did you pay? Take off 3,000 and you're left with, basically for that short period of time, 131 days, you paid $86.14. Make sense? All right. Now, that's using, this is the simple interest equation right here. But you could go back to something that you knew from the past. I equals PRT. That will get you the interest, that capital I, interest in dollars. So we could actually calculate this, just the interest, by having the right amounts. So let's try it. I equals, what's the principal amount? 3,000, like before, times the rate, which was how much? 0.08. Times our time, one more time, is 131 out of 365. And if you multiply that out, let's see what you come up with. Does it work? So that you should get $86.14 if you round it up. $86.14. So simple interest is used still in society, although it's not a good return for the money. There's no doubt. And in fact, if you were to draw a graph of simple interest versus compound, here's how it would look. This is time, and this is return, or dollars, that you'd accumulate. Simple interest grows like this. It starts at 0 and goes straight like that. It does grow, but it grows linearly. Compound, as you've maybe heard from other classes, it goes like this. It grows exponentially. Now, what's interesting, and a lot of people don't see this is the compound, and this is simple, is that this is an expanded view, but this is at 1 year. Within the first year, simple interest is actually higher than compound. But after that, compound explodes and grows so much faster. So if you were lending money out, which many lending institutions will do, they'll lend it out with simple because they'll get a higher return, believe it or not, if it's a short-term loan. Okay? But if it's a long-term loan, it's better to have compound. So anything over a year is compound interest. Should be the way to go. Now I would say, and I'm just estimating at this point, but 98 to 99% of the banks that you go to or the lending institutions will use compound interest. So that's the majority of our talk tonight, is look into that area. But it's good to know about simple. Also, some of you, you're familiar with the Canadian system, but let me just tell you, in the US, we assume a 365-day year. But in Canada, they will use what they call banker's rule. And banker's rule says we need a 360-day year. So interestingly enough, if someone said, well, you're in a Canadian system, you're in Winnipeg, or you're in Montreal or Toronto, instead of using 365, they'd use a 360-day year. So that's also a good thing to realize, but it's so subtle. Does it make sense to you? If I make that 360, what happens to the interest you pay? It would go up. Not much, but it would go up. Maybe it's $87. You can check it out and see. If you make that 360, you actually pay more.